this is Helen bringing you another episode of the Summoning Circle. Today, I have summoned Roman Kenney. Roman began his career at just 19 as a pixel artist and then went on to spend 27 years at Blizzard, contributing to legendary franchises in the industry, including World of Warcraft and Overwatch. He's the creative force behind characters like Sylvanas, Ghost, Onyxia, and the Murlocs. Now, he's returning to his pixel art roots, and we on the Bisonic team are lucky enough to have his expertise informing the Forgotten Runiverse. Let's welcome Roman. Hi, Roman.
Hello, everybody.
I love the Dragon Ball shirt.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't really watch much Dragon Ball, but I do like the style of the shirt and everything, but yeah.
Yeah, it is really good art just on its own. I'm in a similar place. So you started in the industry at just 19 as a pixel artist. What was it like working in art back then versus now?
Actually, it's kind of a funny story. My mom found a flyer when she worked at UCI on the ground when I was like 18 or almost 19 or something, and brought it home, and it was a picture of a Viking. And it said, if you could draw this, you should give us a call. We make video games and stuff. And it was called a company called Silicon and Synapse. So I got on my 10-speed with my portfolio in my arm and wrote down to the address, which was like, just like 5 miles away or so from my house, and showed them my portfolio. And they didn't believe at first that I was drawing some of the things that I did. But then after some convincing, and this is before they did art tests or any like hardcore, review and secondary interviews and, drawing tests and stuff like that, they decided to give me a shot. And, basically was, can you use email? Can you use Deluxe Paint and Deluxe Animator? You're hired. So it wasn't like quite the ordeal of trying to get in the video game industry as it is now.
Wow. How many people were at Blizzard when you started?
I was the 13th person hired. So the next one was Lost Vikings 2, Blackthorn, and Death of Superman, and Justice League Task Force. Then we started getting into once we became part of Davidson, we started working on Diablo and StarCraft and then Warcraft. I had actually left the company for about a year to start my own company with a bunch of guys from Blizzard right after StarCraft came out. And we saw how well StarCraft did, but then we found out it's a lot harder than it seems. And Alan Adham, who was the president of Blizzard at the time, even told us that. They're like, hey guys, you don't know what you're in for. This is a lot harder than it seems to do this company. And I didn't realize at the time that Alan and Mike, I think, had actually asked their parents for money to pay us during a certain period of time, because after we worked with Interplay on Lost Vikings and our next contract with Sunsoft or something, we were really struggling for financial, gain in any way. And it wasn't really until Warcraft did pretty well, and in the magazines they were reviewing it really well, that we started being able to feel like, okay, we're a little more financially secure again. But the whole time for us, the rest of the employees, we didn't know how close they were to shutting down the studio.
Right.
And so we're eternally grateful for them, for their parents loaning them money to help pay us, to keep us going, keep the lights on and stuff. And so we kind of went through the same thing when we started our own company. We were, struggling for support, finance and investors and stuff in our game, even though it was really cool. And I had all this, I had this whole book of creatures. It was going to be like a mount riding game, so I had all these different mounts and all these different characters and races from different parts of the world. It was a lot more high fantasy kind of style. So I came back to Blizzard, and so they hired me back, and I was very thankful that they did that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, money really complicates.
They could have just told me to go pound sand, you make this choice, And we had video game jams. I learned to program a little bit just so I could get in the video game jams with people. But yeah, so I guess a couple years later, Riot Studios started releasing pixel art kind of games. So I'm like, dang, I want to do that. But that was right when I found Bisonic, and they wanted to hire me to start working on Runiverse. So I was like, all right, cool. This is awesome. I like this even better.
Amazing. Yeah, we're very lucky. Whew, glad that worked out, Roman. So, what's your workflow like when you're starting on a new game art project?
I usually try to do some research on the IP first. Sometimes it's just that I've been so familiar with the IPs for long enough, or, it's something very common themed. Because I used to play a lot of video games. I don't get as much time to play now, but uh, if it's like a fighting game, I know a lot about fighting games. It depends on what the IP is, but yeah, usually I'll try to do that first and then start going into like a kind of blue sky phase. Like, so what kind of specific or less specific creatures or world is this supposed to be? What are the limitations that you're thinking are going to happen? What kind of worlds is this going to be on? And to start giving me an idea what kind of style that we're going for, like, because Overwatch to pixel art is a big style jump, as well as, the genre difference and everything. So I'll go into that kind of mode, and then I'll start coming up with light sketches and general idea designs and stuff like that before we get into more specific designs, color, and how powerful some creature is going to be, or what kind of belt it has to wear to hold this weapon over its shoulder or something.
So, how do you balance bringing your own style to a franchise's established style?
That's tricky because I'll usually try to follow the style of whoever the main artist or style that they're going after as much as possible. But because I didn't really go to school for it, I don't really have a specific formula on that. I wasn't really taught a certain way to do that kind of thing. So a lot of times my style just kind of seeps in through the things I like to draw, that I'll kind of, people will recognize some of my style in it. But a lot of times people won't even know that it's my stuff because I'll match the style of whatever the main direction or style of the game is, the art style of the game.
This is very cool. You're such a true artist. It feels like you really just immerse yourself in the world, and it's not really about some established mathematical listy method. It's more your intuition. I mean, as you said, it's like that's what got you there. It's not that you even went to school for it, you said.
Yeah, like I would say I'm kind of a generalist, but I don't really know a lot of different programs, or I still have like just very specific programs that I use, like Photoshop and Max. I never really got into like all the other different types of 3D tools, ZBrush a little bit, but then even then I kind of lost interest because I just wanted to stick to more traditional illustration or pixel art.
Well, we're very lucky that you wanted to stay true to pixel art because you're with us on Forgotten Runiverse now. I'm wondering what drew you to this project and what your favorite part has been.
Well, I mean, obviously the fantasy aspect of it. I talked to Bruce and Gabriel, and they gave me kind of an art test of sorts. They asked, like, could you do something like this? So I presented that to them. It's like a animation of a battler between 4 characters and a giant eyeball creature and some goblins. I was just doing it as a demo mock-up to show them what the game could look like, based off my experience and memory of playing RPGs and stuff growing up.
So these pieces I'm showing now, these are all other designs that you've done in the world that the player base has played a bit in the betas. There's some new ones we haven't even shown yet. I'm noticing in your designs, like, you seem to stay pretty true to the pixel art style, even in the concept.
If I have enough real estate, pixel art is finicky like that. If they want something that's supposed to be a very elaborate creature, but in a 8 pixel by 8 pixel, or 16 by 16 or 32 by 32, it's going to start, being harder to read. So you have to pick up, very key features of a design or concept in order to portray that, depending on the size. But because some of the bosses can be, pretty big, I was able to stay truer to the concept art.
Oh, cool. Yeah, we love this one right here. She's pretty giant. Man, that's crazy. Or you're just like, how do I turn Honey into a boss?
Yeah, I originally thought she was supposed to be made out of gold because she was named Golden Queen. And for some reason in my head, I was thinking gold. So I know it's supposed to be honey, but because of the reflective color I used on her, kind of more blue, and highlights were a little more expansive on her, that I feel like she kind of came off looking more like gold. But I think it still looks cool. I mean, it's close enough to honey, right?
It's even better that it's gold. Yeah, I totally think that's such a cool artistic interpretation. They say golden honey, don't they?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you've worked on both the enemies and some of our landscapes. Is there any different process when thinking about the landscape designs versus the character designs in a pixel game?
One of the main things that you want to do is kind of with landscapes, you're kind of trying to set up atmosphere, mood, and perspective with both creatures and environments. You're trying to set up the right composition, maybe more so in environments than creatures, and silhouette. They're very important, like the where your eye is going to go in the picture for compositions, and then how well things separate the depth of things. Like you'll notice on this giant frog creature, as it gets further back, just like in an atmosphere environment piece, it starts to get a little darker as it goes down into shadow, and I don't have to use as many colors, but I have to make sure the shapes read really well and simplify the shapes as it gets further back so it's not too busy and distracting, and keep the main focus up front where more light is hitting and you're getting more range of color and stuff. And it's kind of the same thing. You can think of a creature like an environment in that way, I guess, but it's a lot different overall.
Cool. Okay, I can see that. I'll look for it now and appreciate it in your designs as I go through the game. Um, so you've worked in everything from AAA to indie projects. Where do you see gaming going in the coming decades?
Obviously, 3D has kind of taken off. It's hit peaks and valleys over the years. For a while there, I was really getting back into retro gaming and playing either games that looked like retro games. That's kind of what got me back into pixel art about 5-6 years ago. Before that, I was playing more like Overwatch, Call of Duty type games. And then before that was MMORPGs. But it's kind of weird how it's gone full circle, and it's kind of coming back more to that retro kind of style that people probably first fell in love with games in the first place. I guess depending on when they were born, obviously, but even days just sitting on the couch playing GoldenEye with my buddies when I was already almost 30 years old, it still has that retro feel when you go back and see older games on the PlayStation or the GameCube or the Dreamcast and stuff like that. I always think of those as retro games, even though some of them were 3D-ish. I don't know if that's a real answer, but I do feel like the game industry is kind of coming back around to the retro style, or it has been for the last couple of years. Again, I haven't been playing a lot of video games lately, besides games with my kids and stuff like that. We've been playing a lot of Mario Kart and watching my kid play Minecraft or Roblox for hours, and just going like, oh, now I want to go play Ninja Gaiden again or something. I got to get out of here. But yeah, I don't know. It's such a wide range now in demographic. It's a big question. I don't know where it's going as much as I can just see things expanding for sure. I wouldn't be able to tell you specifics. So I do think AI is going to become a big part of it, but I know that's the boogeyman. So that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah. All the eras have been everlasting. It's a cutting edge industry, and it has been for so long, but I wouldn't be the first to say that a good game is good forever.
Yeah, if it's a really good game and there's certain themes and stories and styles that you just appreciate, that is kind of timeless. And then there's some that probably fade out for a while and then come back later, or appeal to a smaller or larger demographic. That it's just getting bigger and bigger. That's all I can really say.
Yeah.
I don't see it slowing down.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it is cool that it seems like there are more indie opportunities, I think that's a good thing for artists. Mm-hmm. Last question I'd like to ask you is, what has been the most valuable lesson you've learned during your career as an artist?
let me start off by saying I spent most of my career, almost all of my career, in the trenches. Liking, I was around a bunch of other young guys when I first started. We all kind of were just doing art or engineering or programming or design. And as we got older, they started going more into executive roles or leadership roles. And I just wanted to stay doing art. So I never really pursued anything outside of just wanting to just do art for the games. That's like always been my real passion. And maybe now I could say, as I get older and I realize, oh, time takes a toll on your eyes and your stamina to stay up and work, 16 hours straight and just eat pizza as a reward, that I realized maybe they had a good idea going more into leadership and executive roles. But I think I'd always miss doing like this kind of stuff, like just being able to touch all different IPs and styles and, the inspiration that I get from it and the experience I get from being in the art and with the other artists that are younger, several generations of different artists that I've kind of worked alongside. For me, it's like find out what your real passion is and stay with that. If you want to move up in the industry, that's cool too, if that's something that you're passionate about. But I didn't really start feeling inspired or wanting to lead or be a director or guide or in any sort until I got out of Blizzard and I started seeing other games and saying, wow, I'd really like to help guide that style of that game or be something more inspirational on it with the stuff I've done in the past, when I can see, other games, not necessarily drawing directly from the games that I've worked on or created, but it definitely feels like there's some influence there from games like Warcraft and StarCraft and Diablo and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like when I see those games, it makes me more inspired to like try to get in there as I don't want to say leader, but just some sort of guide, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think the whole team is grateful to have you guiding us. And I don't know what muses told you that you should be coming our way and guiding young artists in the industry now, but our team is really grateful for it. So thank you for bringing that expertise. And I'm glad that you stayed on the art side and that you continued to nurture that.
Cool. Thank you.
And thanks for chatting with me today. I know you're a busy man, so thank you so much, Roman.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, it's a busy day today. Can't wait for Wednesday.
Yeah, definitely. All right, I guess we'll get back to it and I'll see you around. Thank you again.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye.
Called Lost Vikings. So these were all
the Vikings.
Yeah, so it's got Olaf on the bottom and Balog and Eric at the top.